Hi, thanks for joining and welcome to another patch breakdown. In this video, I'll talk through the super lo-fi glitch performance, or the glitch patch performance that I recorded in my previous video. This single page shows the entire patch. In this video, we'll be going through each of the voices, each of the sections one at a time. I will do a detailed run through of each of the patches, the modules, the connections, etc. And then at the end of each description, we'll have a listen to each one. So, let's get started. The first voice, the first section, is the most complicated of the patch. It's essentially one single voice that's split in two, to the left and the right channels, and then we're applying different effects, different filtering effects to each of the voices. So starting on the left, we've got a clock, a very slow clock, driving a gate sequencer, a Laddick S180. Not really using the gates out of that sequencer, but we're using it to drive a CV sequence within the Laddick S183. That CV sequence is quantized using the Instro harmonic. The harmonic is outputting two notes, so the root note and then also the third note within that scale. The root and third notes are going into the pitch, the voltage per octave input on the Acid Rain chainsaw VCO. That VCO is being modulated, so it's being detuned slightly with one LFO coming from the Behringer 140, and then the invert of that LFO is going into the shape, so adjusting the shape from a saw to a square wave. The outputs of the chainsaw, we've got left and right outputs, and they are split. So we have the left going to a Zlob VCF, a state variable filter. That's being modulated by, first of all, we've got a EuroPi consequencer. That's sending gates to an envelope generator, a Behringer 140. The envelope, the ADSR envelope coming out of that is going into the frequency cutoff. Out of the Zlob filter, we're going into veils, and then more on that later. The other side, so the right channel of the Acid Rain chainsaw goes into ripples, mutable ripples. This is also being modulated. So one chunk of modulation is coming from Clep Diaz, that's providing stepped LFO. I'm using the unidirectional output of the Clep. That's being attenuated and that's going into the resonance input on ripples. Into the cutoff frequency, I have an envelope being generated by the Behringer 140. That is being triggered by a gate output from a consequencer module. And also we have FM, the FM input, the linear input, being modulated using the inverse of that envelope, again coming from the Behringer 140. Out of ripples, we're going into VCA, so mutable veils. And here, the VCA is being opened by gates being sent from a BeatStep Pro, and essentially we're sending one gate to the left voice, then one gate to the right voice, then another gate to the left voice, and that's creating a ping-pong effect. So step one, the gate will be sent into the first channel of the DOT for A140, that will send an envelope to the left channel veils, and then step two, it'll send it to the right and do the same thing. That sound is converging into the left and right inputs of the qubit data bender. That data bender is being clocked, so essentially sampling the incoming audio in line with the clock divided by 1, so standard clock rate. And it also has the repeats, so the number of times it will be, or the recorded audio will be repeated. That's been modulated by the Zlob LFO, the skew fade LFO. Out of the data bender, we're going into an FX8 unit for some nice reverb, in fact for some delay with reverb. And the delay time of that is being modulated by another envelope generator, the Bifaco Rampage. That's a really slow triangle envelope, and what that's doing is creating a very slow build, sort of a nice washy sound that sort of builds, crescendos, and then fades out. So let's have a listen. Here we have the patch for the second voice in the overall patch. So the main voice is coming from the Laquelic Atiritas. That's going into an Erica Synth Polyvox filter. The frequency, the cutoff frequency of that filter is being modulated by stepped LFO, bidirectional stepped LFO, coming from the Klep Diaz. It then goes through a series of effects to sort of dirty, muddy, overdrive the sound and add some delay. So I'm going into, first of all, a Roboto effects unit. That's providing a sort of a robot type distortion on top of the voice. I'm next going into a Look Mum No Computer safety valve, so a valve based overdrive unit. That's going into Mimeophone for some delay. And then the stereo output from the Mimeophone is going into an FX aid unit for a reverb. Okay, so let's have a listen to this voice. The third voice in this patch, the main voice is coming from the Strega. I have a pitch CV going into the voltage per octave input from the Arturia KeyStep Pro. The gate output of the KeyStep Pro is going into the Bifaco Rampage to create an envelope, and the output of that envelope is driving the CV of another channel of mutable veils. Out of veils, we're going into some spring reverb, some really wet spring reverb, and then out to the mixer. So let's have a listen to this one. Finally, we have the percussion section. So we have the drum sound coming from the VPME.D quad drum, and that's being driven by a Europi consequencer. So we have three gate outputs coming from the consequencer. The first going to the kick input, the second going to the snare input, and then the third we're going into a hi-hat input. We're also modulating the drum sound. So the snare, the modulation is being modulated by stepped CV coming out of the consequencer output 5. Out of output 6 on the consequencer, we've got some more random step CV, and that's modulating the pitch of the hi-hat. This is clocked incredibly slow, so the variations that we hear in this patch are quite subtle. But let's have a listen to that. So there you have it. Hopefully you enjoyed this patch breakdown. See you on the next one.